Hi, welcome to this week's mini masterclass. My name is Cameron Davis. I'm a percussionist going to Westchester University. I'm pursuing my master's in percussion performance. And this week I thought I'd take a little time and talk to you about the most interesting and exciting thing a musician can possibly do. Practice. I know what you're thinking. Practicing can seem like a chore, it could seem boring, hopefully not, but it could seem boring or frustrating. I mean, who wouldn't want to take an aspect of their playing that they're not inherently good at and put it under a microscope and do it over and over again? Turns out that's kind of how you get better. If you're like me, I didn't take kindly to practicing at first either. But I figured out that's because I wasn't doing it correctly. And it took me a long time to figure it out. Practice, it should be engaging, it should be efficient, and, it should leave you with a sense of fulfillment, a sense of progress. Some days it's more apparent than others. But I have a couple of tips for you to either help give you an idea of where to start with practicing, because when I started, I certainly didn't have a clue. Or if you do have a clue, maybe you can take some of these ideas and implement them into your everyday life. So here we go. Here's Cameron's big top 10 amazing list of amazing practice, amazing things, amazing. Number 1, please, when you're practicing a difficult passage or learning new music, go slowly. Start slowly. I'm talking 30 to 40 clicks under tempo. This is for one reason. Your hands are moving at such a slow speed that it's almost impossible for them to make a mistake, and you don't learn it incorrectly. Now, building something up to tempo is challenging as well. How I do it is it takes a little bit, but I slowly, like I said, I start really slow, and I slowly increase the tempo incrementally over the course of when I'm working on this work. So if I start about 30 clicks under, maybe I'll bump the tempo up 1 or 2 clicks at a time until I feel super comfortable with it. And then I'll bump it up another 1 or 2 clicks. I'm not jumping 5 clicks or 10 clicks. It's really slow. Some people might call it painstaking, but this is kind of how you get results. This is how you develop accuracy and confidence in your playing. Number 2, it's really important to kind of feel out a good routine. I'll be the first to admit that the hardest part about practicing is the fact that you have to do it every day, right? That's the hardest part about anything. It's just showing up. If you want to run a mile or get into running, you don't run a marathon right away. You start slow, but you do it every day, or whatever habit you want to build up or activity. It's the same thing with practicing. It's not only a method of getting better, but it's also a practice of maintaining as well, which is equally as important, and I can get into that a little bit later. But in terms of developing a routine, which is definitely the easiest way to make sure that you do something every day, in terms of developing a routine, I have this advice. Just try studying yourself. Approach it with curiosity. What time of the day do you feel most productive, feel most awake, most at your go-get-'em stage? Try to isolate those periods. I mean, you might not be able to sleep in as late, because maybe it turns out you're a morning person, God forbid, but that's step 1, I think, is just figuring out, what time of day do I want to be practicing? And now with this amazing COVID-19 thing that everyone's talking about, I don't even know what it is, but just kidding, it's a virus, be safe. Now with all this free time that we have, that schools are closed, it's kind of easiest now more than ever. So do some research. But whatever kind of routine you establish, make sure it's sustainable above all else. Like I'm not telling you to establish like a 6-hour marathon every day of practice. Or I'm not telling you, like I practice best at 3 a.m. outside in a megaphone. No, please don't do that. Make sure it has to be realistic in order for it to be sustainable, in order for it to become a habit. That's the end goal, right? For practice to become a habit and for it to be a practical and engaging habit. Number 3. I realized I probably didn't number the first 2. So that was 1 and 2. This is 3 of Cameron's magical mystery list of practicing tips. Take breaks, please. This goes in line with another thing about practicing. Cramming, as anyone has ever told you before, cramming doesn't work. And I so mean that. And I still do. I'm guilty of it. I still do it. Not with music, but, everyone does it sometimes. But with your practice, please don't cram. And I'll tell you why. If you cram something before a concert, I'm talking like learn it like seriously last minute, and then you have to play it. Excuse me. You won't be able to enjoy yourself. You won't be able to enjoy the music. You'll be too distracted thinking, man, like I really hope I nail this. Like I hope this works out, right? You never want to be in the I hope this works out dimension. You want to be in the I know I've practiced this. I know I've put in the work. I'm going to nail this dimension. That's the golden zone, right? So the way to avoid that is don't cram. Back to taking breaks. You want to take breaks both physically and mentally from practicing. Because if you're practicing the right way, it should be a very rewarding but also mentally draining activity. Seriously, it takes a lot of mental stamina to do. Physically, you should take breaks with the rest up your hands. If your hands aren't feeling well, if something starts hurting, definitely stop then. But if just something doesn't feel right or you feel too tense, give your hands a rest. Some of the things we do with percussion, I'm talking 4 mallets or full strokes on marching drums, like it's not how our hands were initially supposed to move, so they're going to experience some discomfort. And you got to accommodate for that. But what do I mean by mental breaks with practicing? Which is, honestly, I think this is one of the keystones of this entire practice theory, is since it's such a draining practice if you do it well, again, rewarding, but it takes work, your brain needs a break. And it could be just do it, take a walk, or grab a snack. One of my favorite ways to take a break nowadays is I'm on that New Horizon gang. So I literally practice for about 20 minutes and then it's an Animal Crossing break. I do this because it's, with the amount of mental energy you're using, it's hard to stay focused and thoughtful for that long at a time. It's just how the human brain works. If you can do it, you're a freak. But chances are you're with me and the 99% of the human race who, we can't sustain that. how I know when I'm ready to take a break is I'll get like frustrated and I'll just start making stupid mistakes that I know that I haven't made before, and it's just kind of a sign that my brain is throwing up the white flag, like, hey, bozo. That's right, I used the word bozo. Take a break. Like, I need it. It's kaput. So that's super important. I think that it's how you stay engaged and fresh and make your practice actually count for something. If you're exhausted, you're not going to have a good practice session. Number 4, I think thoughtful practice is the best kind of practice. What does that mean, to thoughtfully practice? It means to pay attention to what you're doing, above all else. You can rep something over and over again like a robot, like a zombie, just playing the notes and letting your hands take care of the work. Sure, that's a good way to build muscle memory. Yeah, it's not completely useless. But it's not a very good way to learn music. So how do you thoughtfully practice? Well, you notice things. You ask questions and you experiment, for sure. Experimenting has given me a lot of ways to get creative with my practicing. Like, let's say we're just practicing scales, and we're doing 16th notes, like spice it up a little bit. You know, alter the rhythm, practice at different dynamics, practice one hand alone. These are all tools to kind of dust off the cobwebs and break you out of the zombie mode of practicing, and just making sure you're not running on autopilot. That's what we want to avoid, is actively engaging your mind and just getting creative with this stuff. Or else you will find it boring and you will lose interest pretty quickly. Number 5. Please, I know we just met. Do this as a personal favor for me. Use a metronome when you practice, please, and use a metronome correctly. Not only is a metronome super helpful for tempo, obviously playing in time, it's super helpful for that incremental tempo stuff that I talked about earlier with slow practice. But you have to use it in the right way. And what I mean by that is you can play along with a metronome and you can listen to the metronome for tempo. But you're setting yourself up for disappointment, I think, when you do that. Because it's kind of acting as your crutch then. And once you take that metronome away, I mean, you were relying on that pulse, and now it's gone, and you probably won't be too happy with what that means for you. So how I approach this is I like to think about playing with the metronome rather than playing it to a metronome. Meaning, establish the pulse in yourself. Keep time as much as you can, as best you can, and check in every once in a while and make sure you're still with the metronome, because the metronome will keep you honest. As long as you're not listening for those beats falling all the time, chances are you're playing with a metronome and not to the metronome. Did I say that right? Yes. Duet with the metronome. It's also super helpful to isolate or make you aware of certain tendencies of your playing. Let's say there's a passage that you're working on for a district solo, and you feel like you're rushing this one section you don't know. Metronome will call you out in a second, obviously. It also gives you a good opportunity to get your ears around what it should sound like. Like, oh, this is how this section sounds when I'm not rushing it, how it's actually supposed to sound, or when I'm not dragging. Very helpful. I would say my number six is if you're doing ensemble playing, play along with a recording. It's very helpful. Pop in your Bluetooth headphones, put on the speaker, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you can hear it and you can hear yourself. It gives you a great perspective of how your part fits in with the rest of the music. And it lets you get your head around the sound, and it's a little less boring than just playing by yourself. I played orchestral excerpts many times where it's just me, and it really makes a difference when you have the rest of the ensemble there with you, whether it's a real ensemble or it's even just a recording. Number 7, and we're all guilty of this one, myself included, for sure. Every day I have to fight against this. But please practice what needs practicing. Anyone can saunter up to the marimba and play that one lick that they know is easy and that they know they can nail. And it's so easy to get carried away and be just like, yeah, I sound good. I've done it. It happens. It's a tendency. But a way to combat this, first off, let's be real. It's just not productive. And you're wasting your own time, your own valuable practice time, by engaging in something that you already can do, rather than trying to perfect something that you need work on. Is it uncomfortable to isolate something that you can't do well and kind of force yourself to iron out the details? Yeah, it can be. But you'll grow from it 100%. So what I say is start every practice session with working on the stuff that you need to first. Nail down that hard lick. Give it a couple repetitions, and then maybe go back as like a sweep up maintenance thing with the parts that you already know. As I said earlier, practicing is not only a learning game and a mastery game, it's also an upkeep and maintenance thing. So, yes, please focus on the parts that you are not comfortable with first, but also don't forget about the parts that you are comfortable with, because if you let them sit too long, now we have another problem on our hands. A good way to nail down a tricky section, it's best if you can practice the hardest stuff every day. I have a couple of licks in my notebook in my music that I have starred and say, you know what, these are so hard that I actually need to practice them every day, because if I don't, I'll flat fall on my face. It's tough, it takes discipline, but you can do it. Number 8, have a good warm-up routine, both mentally and physically, hands-wise, musically. How I start every single one of my practice sessions is I do stretches, believe it or not. I do, the good old T-arm stretch, and I get this move going from my forearms. It feels very nice. Do it up like that too. It should only take about a minute or two. Don't spend all day doing this. And then I also get my hands as well. So I like to lightly massage some of my thumb muscles right here on my palm. I'll get them right here, and then I'll also do the other side as well. Fingers are important too. That's where a lot of your small muscle movement and dexterity is, so it's nice to get those warmed up and primed as well. So I like pressing them together. I get a nice stretch out of them that way. And then also, this is good for your hands and your fingers. Tighten, make 2 fists, and tighten and squeeze as hard as you can. And then slowly release. And then do it again. Nice. In terms of musical warm-ups, for marimba, it could be anything. It could be scales. It could be major and minor. It could be arpeggios. If you're doing 4-mallet stuff, one of the things that I like to do is work out now I'm a Stevens grip user, so I work out of the Lee Howard Stevens Method of Movement book. If you get the 25th anniversary edition, there's tons of exercises that cover every nook and cranny of that technique. It's super thorough. It's even got like a textbook built in the front of it. If you take the time and read through it, you'll be fine. It's like a one-stop shop for mallet marimba technique. So what I do is I choose one of those exercises per technique for stroke type. So I'll choose one independent stroke. I'll choose one single independent. I just said that. Single alternating. Excuse me. I'll choose one for double laterals. Choose one for double verticals. And just choose one of each, and then play it in whatever key you want, and then move on. But it's super cool to visit those things every day and just it's so hard to be productive right off the bat if you're like coming in from the freezing cold and like you can barely move your wrists up and down. Like, just get them warm, and I promise you'll have it'll feel better. You'll be less tense. You'll be less frustrated. For snare drum, rudiments work for sure. You could use the Nard rudiment list. You could do like 4 full strokes, 8 on a hand. You could practice your rolls. One of my favorite books. This is the book that I use for my snare drum warm up. It's called Stick Control. Maybe some of you have heard of this before. It's by George Lawrence Stone. And what Mr. Stone has done here is he has gone through like every conceivable, if you can see, like every conceivable sticking permutation for like 16th notes, and he's got flam beats in here, triplet exercises, got open and closed stroke rolls. It's super nice. Different meters, 3/8, 6/8, dotted, triplet. He's got it all. He's got quintuplets in there. That's really nice for building muscle memory. It's kind of almost meditative. And it gets your hands moving just in the best way. I usually start with snare drum first, just because it translates so well to everything else. Another cool technique to use is planning your warm-ups around what you're actually working on. I'll give you an example. Let's say the key I'm working on a piece in is A major. I'm working on a piece in A major. I'll probably spend a lot more time on the A major scale. I'll probably do my permutations centered around the A major tonality. Let's say do you have a piece with a long, like a 9-minute snare drum roll in it? What are you doing? Like put rolls in your practice, in your warm-up routine, Try to plan ahead, make exercises out of what you're practicing to warm up. It's super, super good time saver. It's just smart. And again, stretching's good before. If you're super hardcore into it, like you're a yogi or something, do it after too. I don't care. Just make sure you take care of yourself. And if you ever feel your arm, obviously you've heard this a ton of times, but I'm saying it now. If anything ever starts to feel hurt, if anything starts to hurt or feel too tense, please just stop. It's not, let yourself recover. Something's not right. It's no amount of progress that you could make on that piece right now while your hand is hurting is ever going to be worth future complications, because it can get annoying. I have so many friends, mostly violinists, with carpal tunnel syndrome, and it gets in the way of everything. Not only your music making, but your regular life. Number 9, mental practice. Super important. I know just as well as anyone. Now, I can't really say that because I have a marimba in the back here, but that's my school's, and they're letting me use it during the COVID crisis. So, but I know just as well as anyone that we percussionists are in a different kind of class of our own, and that the fact that we don't usually own our own instruments. If you do have a 5 octave in your basement, you're a lucky duck. A way to combat this is visualization, which is probably the next best thing to actually having the dang marimba in your room. Visualization is pretty much you closing your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, but thinking through the piece and imagining yourself playing it, imagining yourself hitting each of your notes, playing through what you need to, practicing what you need to. And by God, that is the best way to figure out whether you've actually learned a piece or not, is if you can play through it physically in your head. It keeps your mind sharp. It keeps your memory moving. It's just very practical. And man, I do it all the time. Especially if I'm like sitting in it. I didn't get that much practicing done that day, and I'm like sitting waiting for the bus or something. I'll just tune out and think about my my repertoire, my Bach etude or whatever I'm working on. Number 10. It's a really good idea to set goals, going into a practice session and coming out of one. So when I go into a practice session, I'm usually thinking about what I want to work on. This could mean anything from what warm-ups I'm going to be focusing on that day, how much time I'm going to be spending on that, to what are my big sections that I want to work on today? What are the big sections that I want to accomplish this week, this month? You can get as organized as you'd like with it. And coming out, so you log those as you do them, right? And coming out of it, you look back afterwards and you log down everything you've done. And now you have a summary of your practice sessions. So not as only is it up here, it's here too, which is invaluable. It helps for organization. And to be honest, it's pretty nice seeing it, like looking down and seeing the progress you've made. From day to day, from session to session. It's very easy in this profession to get, not even profession, in a practice, to get bogged down, I just don't feel like I made enough progress today. Or this one lick is so frustrating. This one section just is kicking my butt. I don't think I'm getting any better. And then you can look at that practice log and say, well, no, hold on. I actually started this thing at 70 beats per minute, and I've made it to 115. That's a considerable jump in progress. That's 45 clicks, dude. Nice. So it helps. At least that's how I view it. It's kind of like a nice little pat on the back motivator. The last thing I'll say is it's very helpful to also concretely write things down in your music too. I've learned the Fugue in G minor by Johann Sebastian Bach from the Violin Sonata Number 1 in G minor. And yes, I know it's not a violin, it's a marimba, but I'm playing the violin part on a marimba. But if you would like to see, this is my music. Now, if you can see, hopefully I don't block out the light. I have desecrated this thing with my pencil. I've seriously made a mess here. And you can also see, I was mentioning it before, but I've made notes about where the extra tricky spots are that I need to practice every day. I've made them like little stars. I've written in my dynamics, and I've written in my mallet stickings, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just so if I need to come back to this at a later date for an audition or something, it's all right there. It's just smart. So you should have a pencil anyway whenever you're making music. Take advantage of it. So to recap real quick. Number 1, please go slowly and learn the notes correctly. Work it up over time. It's way easier to learn something. Yeah, you've heard the phrase measure once. That's not it at all. Measure twice, cut once. Think of the cut once as your performance. and the measuring is practicing, but don't just practice twice. Practice a lot. That idiom fell apart. Number 2, figure out a good routine. Study yourself. Number 3, take breaks for this and these. They'll thank you later. It doesn't all have to be in like a 3-hour marathon chunk. Be a human. Go play outside. Play outside. You're in high school. 4, practice thoughtfully. Experiment, notice things, ask questions, and please get creative. Use a metronome. Use a metronome. Play with recordings. Practice what needs practicing. Don't just play something that you know you can play just for the sake of playing it. It's ridiculous. Have a good warm-up routine. One that's consistent, but also one that integrates the repertoire that you're working on. And, don't do the same thing every time. Don't play your scales in the same order every time. Mix it up a little bit. Mental practice. Try visualization if you're not in an instrument. Set goals so you can continue to inspire yourself to work hard and keep your organization on tab. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name's Cameron Davis, and I hope to see you next week.